Hi, this is Bobby Kimbrough. I'm excited to be with you today, even though I may not be there in the present. I'm there with you in spirit. I'm away up here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, trying to better myself and better the community by educating myself. When I was asked to speak to you all about the Salvation Army, I was excited about that for several reasons. I'll tell you why, but first, before I begin, I want to thank all of those that are present here today to be a part of this, and I want to thank the men and women that put this together and the men and women that work behind the scenes that make the Salvation Army what it is today. And as always, I'd be remiss if I didn't give thanks to the author of my life, the makers of the heavens and the earth, for what God is doing and done in my life. You know, the message and the theme is love beyond. Several years ago, I was writing about beyond midnight. And in that book, I talked about love, how love got me beyond midnight, midnight being a metaphor for difficult times. So when I heard that the theme was love beyond, it struck a nerve. It struck me because beyond all the things that we face in life, it's love that gets you through that. The hunger, the poverty, all the things that we fall short on in life, is love that gets us beyond that. You know, we talk about hope, what the Salvation Army does. It gives hope to the hopeless. It gives food to those that are starving. It gives shelter to those that have no shelter. You know, I do a lot of traveling throughout this community, and I visit a lot of restaurants. And I won't forget that several months ago, I was traveling through the Chick-fil-A, and they had a sign up. And the sign said that it's up to you to close the gap. And what they were referencing was closing the gap by using your app, being ready to order when you pulled up to the microphone. But it stuck in my head about the gap. And I started thinking about all the gaps in our community. And I started thinking about the scripture. It said, who will stand in the gap? If no one will stand in the gap, I'll have to destroy the city. And I started thinking about, again, the Salvation Army, how they have stood in the gap in our community, the Boys and Girls Club, how they have stood in the gap with the mentoring programs, how they have stood in the gap with all the issues that we have in our community. If we just pause for a moment and we talk about what is standing in the gap means, there are so many things that are happening in our community that if we don't stand in the gap, if the Salvation Army doesn't stand in the gap, where would we be? You know, one of the programs that we're working with the Salvation Army on is our mentoring program. How do we give our teens, how do we give our young people hope? How do we give them things to do to better themselves? Because think about this. All of us have a dream. All of us have a place in life we want to arrive, a person we want to become. How do we get there without the Salvation Army? How do we get there without the Boys and Girls Clubs? How do we get there without someone showing us the way? We have a population of men and young women who are homeless, who are hungry, who are undereducated, who have no role models, who have no mentors. What do we do with them? Do we leave them wondering? We don't. That's why we need the Salvation Army. That's why we need the Boys and the Girls Clubs. And that's why we need them to stand in the gap. But they can't stand in the gap by themselves. They can't. You and I know that it takes funding to do this. It takes leadership. What we do today will determine what we become tomorrow. And that's why I encourage you that we've got to stand in the gap with them. You know, a lot of people know me, but they really don't know me. You know, they see the glory of the sheriff's office. They see the Bobby Kimbrough that you see, but they don't know my story. They don't know from whence I come. They don't know that I too benefited from the Salvation Army. They don't know that I benefited from the Hope Center. I'll tell you a quick story that I'll share with you. Several years ago, after the passing of my wife, met a young lady, had a son by her. And the courts awarded me full custody of my son. But he had to go visit with her twice a month. And I'll never forget this particular weekend, he told me, Dad, my mom wants you to drop me off at my sister's house. I said, no problem. And I dropped him off there. I didn't think nothing of it. He came back home that Sunday, and the following week we were going to church, pulled up off of Northwest Boulevard, made a right on the Trade Street, turned in the Union Baptist Church. And my son said to me, Dad, that's where I stay when I go visit my mom. And I said, you do what? And he said, I stay right there. And he pointed to this place. I had no idea what the place was. So I had to investigate. And it was the Hope Center. It was a place, the only place in this county that offers shelter for women, men with nowhere to go, that have kids. It was the only place in this community that does that. And I was angry for a moment because I guess sometimes arrogance overtakes us and think that we're better than that. But it takes me back to some of the things that my father said, there go I, had it not been for the grace of God. But I was grateful that the Hope Center was there because I don't know where she would have done that weekend or where he would have been. A couple weeks later, I saw her. I was coming down Northwest Boulevard again, and she was standing on the bus stop. And I stopped and I gave her a ride. And I took her to a university right there beside Food Line, where they have a beauty school up there for university. And she told me how the Hope Center was helping her get her life together. It brought tears to my eyes. It brought tears to my eyes because I had no idea the struggle that she was enduring. I had no idea what she was going through. But what even gave me a smile was that there was a place that was helping her even though she was struggling. Again, they stood in the gap. When I look around this community, all the tragedy that I see, we have a great community. You live in the 4th largest county in the state of North Carolina. You live in one of the wealthiest counties in the state of North Carolina, Forsyth. But we have problems like a lot of counties do. But what I would tell you is that if it's not for the Salvation Army, then who? If it's not for the Boys and Girls Club, then who? If they don't stand in the gap, then who? What I will encourage you to do is this. You know, I've often said this, that show me where a man spends his time and his treasures, and I can show you what he loves. What I'm asking you is that if you love this community, you love and support what they do, then bring your time. More importantly, bring your treasures. We need funding to keep the Salvation Army going. We need funding to keep the Hope Center in the care, the love, the spirit that is in. We need funding to mentor our young boys and girls, the Boys and Girls Club. We need your treasures. We need your support. I tell you this because sometimes in life we live in our bubbles and we don't realize what's going on outside of that. But I encourage you to step outside of your bubble, outside of your comfort zone, and see what's really going on and see who's standing in the gap. And I promise you, there are a lot of folk that are sounding promising, right? But they're not proven. What I can tell you is that the Salvation Army is proven. They've been here for years in this community, decades in this community. They're still standing in the gap. They haven't missed a beat standing in the gap. And that is why the city is still standing. That is why we're still in this fight. That is why we're giving hope to the hopeless. That is why we're loving beyond all the problems that we're having, because all of us have midnights in our life. And what gets you through the midnight is love. And it's the love that the Salvation Army is bringing. I'll tell you a story. Some years ago, there was a young boy that was walking down the beach after a storm. And they tell me that you could see the young boy bending down, throwing something back into the ocean every few steps. And they said to him, when they got close to him, I won't say an elderly couple, but I'll say a seasoned couple. And they saw this young boy and they asked him, what are you doing, young man? And he said, I'm trying to save the starfish. They had washed them up on the shore. And the woman said to him, you can't save them all. And the little boy looked at the couple in his innocence. He said, but I gotta try. But I'm telling you, the Salvation Army, we may not save all of them, but we gotta try. We may not give hope to everybody, but we gotta try. And what I want to encourage you to do is, you gotta try. You gotta stand in the gap. Because at the end of the day, the future needs us now. Who we are today is what we did yesterday. Who we'll become tomorrow is what we do today. So I encourage you to get behind the Salvation Army. Bring your time, your treasures. I want to thank you all for being a part of this conversation. I want to thank you for listening. More importantly, I want to thank the Salvation Army for giving hope. I want to thank the Hope Center for giving my son a place to rest his head in my absence. And more importantly, I want to thank God for continuing to smile upon the Salvation Army in this community. As always, I wish I was there in physical, but I truly am there spiritually. I love you all, and may God continue to smile upon this county, the Salvation Army. And never forget, we need you to stand in the gap and love beyond this place. Thank you.